The hapless Boeing Starliner spacecraft safely landed in New Mexico on September 6, 2024, but had to leave its two-person crew behind on the International Space Station. The astronauts' unplanned stranding was due to an abundance of caution over NASA concerns about thruster issues and helium leaks plaguing the spacecraft. We expect the crew to return on a SpaceX Crew Dragon as part of the Crew 9 mission, scheduled to launch on September 26th and expected to return in February or March 2025. The question for Boeing and NASA is, will Starliner ever launch again? NASA and Boeing say they want to fly Starliner again, but is that realistic? One of Starliner's advantages is that it is near completion, meaning it has already incurred its greatest development costs. The issues, though serious, do not foresee the spacecraft being permanently grounded. Starliner has had 3 successful launches and returned to orbit. Although the final flight had to abandon its crew, there were other issues, so none of the flights could be considered complete triumphs. However, on a fundamental level, the crew would have survived all 3 launches, and the landings were all precise and executed as anticipated. The other benefit of continuing to refine Starliner is that, following the grounding of the Space Shuttle program, due to the Columbia disaster and the subsequent early retirement of the Space Shuttle fleet, NASA found itself unable to transport astronauts to the International Space Station. Despite being the primary financial contributor to the construction and operations of the station, the U.S. relied solely on Russia's Soyuz capsules to reach orbit, at a cost up to $90 million per seat. Even with the resolution of geopolitical tensions between the U.S. and Russia, NASA needed alternatives to transport its astronauts to the space station. NASA launched the Commercial Crew Program to remove itself from the role of launching manned missions to the space station, instead contracting Boeing and SpaceX to ferry its astronauts. SpaceX does this for NASA at a cost of $50 million per seat, resulting in significant savings and launches from the United States. The program also aimed to achieve redundancy, which led to the awarding of 2 contracts. The concept ensured that the U.S. wouldn't face the situation again of not being able to launch its astronauts from the United States, and it would benefit from the redundancy of 2 separate programs, each utilizing distinct capsules and launch vehicles to ensure a constant space travel option. It is in NASA's interest to keep Starliner flying and available. The economic viability of Starliner is the issue for Boeing. Boeing is nearly $2 billion in debt over Starliner, and has not had only 1 successful unmanned flight because the other 2 had issues and are not considered successes, despite their safe return to Earth. NASA has stated that they plan to deorbit the International Space Station by 2030, which could leave both SpaceX and Boeing with only 6 or 7 crewed launches each remaining to fly to the space station. This means that Boeing is at the theoretical limit to break even if it could get all 7 launches at maximum occupancy before 2030. But realistically, due to accommodation constraints on the space station, Boeing would never be able to recover the $2 billion loss, though it could make some ground up. Boeing, like SpaceX, was envisioning using Starliner for space tourism, much as SpaceX has done with flights like the recently successful Polaris Dawn mission. However, is this really practical for Boeing, considering that both its commercial airline division and Starliner have suffered a significant public setback, resulting in a loss of consumer confidence in the company? Is Starliner a viable option for space tourism, given its current reputation and the setbacks it has experienced? If it has 5 successful flights to the space station, maybe that will change, but there is no guarantee either. The undefined private space station industry is expected to take shape as 2030 approaches, and the end of the International Space Station draws near. It is anticipated that the new space stations will be privately owned, with a mix of space tourism customers and NASA, CSA, ESA, and JAXA leasing space aboard these space stations. Currently, the U.S. only operates 2 human-rated spacecraft, Starliner and Crew Dragon. Europe, Japan, and Canada do not have human-rated ships, so that leaves a potential market for government and tourism that may not want to use the Russian Soyuz or the Chinese Shenzhou. This means there is a potential future market that could use Starliner, but it is unclear if Boeing wants to compete in this market, considering the losses in the program so far as they could view it as time to cut the losses. The commercial space market, which is still in its infancy, may only have Crew Dragon and possibly Sierra Space's Dream Chaser, which has a crew variant planned. Boeing has been quiet on its plans, other than statements of continuing to work on Starliner, but the muted reaction for Boeing indicates that Starliner's fate is still undecided. Boeing is facing a strike from its largest union of machinists and is furloughing other employees during the strike due to their perceived shortage of cash. This strike and furlough will slow down the corrective work on Starliner and further delay it, potentially leading to the loss of manned flights under their contract with NASA to SpaceX or Russia if they fail to return to space soon. Boeing, along with Lockheed, holds a 50% ownership stake in ULA, which they are attempting to sell to Sierra Space. Since Starliner currently utilizes ULA rockets, selling its interests in ULA would leave it without a guaranteed launch vehicle. Boeing's current global challenges may outweigh any potential future opportunities.